community.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. First thing I'm glad about is that everybody had their brunch like 3 hours ago, so hopefully you still stay awake through this talk. I just want to say a big thank you to the Alzheimer's Association. What a wonderful, wonderful work they are doing. Can we give them a round of applause? That is absolutely amazing. I'm so fortunate to be a part of this, and I want to say a big thank you to, especially to the CEO, David McShay, Eileen, Marlin. Ever since I've become a part of this organization, they've been so wonderful, so supportive. We're helping in supporting me in every way possible. And I'm going to say a little bit about my story, and then kind of let you know how we got to this point where I'm actually speaking in front of you. So how are we doing so far? It's clear I have an accent, right? So can you hear what I'm saying? Am I speaking too fast? Are you okay? Way at the back there. Mr. Santos?
Yeah.
Are we good? All right, cool. Alrighty, let's get into it. So I'm a medical doctor, and I've been, the way we started doing, where I got interested in Alzheimer's disease, I don't really have, knock on wood, anybody in my family who has the condition. Once in a while I hear my mom's forgetting things, and I'm like, quick, let's get her something. Let's fix it, because it's so important. It is so important. Early detection, early treatment, early intervention is so important. I better than anybody else probably know this. I run a clinic in a country called Nigeria. I hope everybody knows that Nigeria is the country that has the most number of people who look like me on the planet. Does everybody know that? Every time I go into an audience, like half of them don't know, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Yeah, we're really loud too, so if you don't know about Nigeria, you're probably not out in the open too much. Anyway, just kidding. So I run a clinic. I still run a clinic from here. I do a lot. I see my patients remotely now. We also have a foundation. The foundation grew out of the clinic. We started addressing kids with brain disorders. In third world countries, it's very common. Not enough good antenatal care, not enough skilled doctors to take care of you during your pregnancy. Almost all the time, there's a problem with the delivery, the kid's brain gets damaged, and mostly because they are poor, it's a lifetime of physical therapy, and it really doesn't do much. So we went into it. Fortunately, I had known people in the US who knew about the brain and what you could do in a third world setting to address these things. Well, long story short, we were so successful in it, we went to the government gave us permission to use our approach. I call it the building strength approach. The building strength approach means this: your brain it doesn't matter how far gone you've gone, how far gone you are, there's always something you can do to somewhat improve function, somewhat improve the structure of the brain, somewhat improve the biochemistry, the physiology. And so that was the approach we used, that we knew there was always something we could do. That's what Montessori and everything you guys have been talking about is so important, because the slightest stimulation that you give to the brain will respond. Now, are they going to be back reciting Shakespeare? No, maybe not, but to some degree you can help. And so the government gave us permission. Well, soon afterwards, we started having people coming to us, bringing their parents. Before they were bringing their kids, now they were bringing their parents who also had strokes and dementia. And so, same story, we applied the same principles, and we started looking at what we can do to that, and eventually we started seeing things that we could do to help. It has taught me a lot too about the brain and what you can do, even as an individual, to, recognize problems quickly and address them as quickly as you possibly can. So while I was here, actually I was going to get to how we started doing what we're doing here. I would come twice a year from Nigeria. I would do courses, I would meet with my mentors and different people in the different research areas of brain science, and I would buy the medications, get the nutraceuticals, and I would go back to Nigeria. But COVID happened while I was here, and a 1 month trip ended up going on 3 years now. So I've been here for a while. So in the process of all that, I was like, well, listen, I got to find out who else is doing something with the people who are elderly and people who have brain disorders like the Alzheimer's. And luckily at a birthday party, I met a member of the Alzheimer's Association, and I told her, we exchanged information, and bada boom, I got involved with the Alzheimer's Association, and like I said, it's been fantastic. So it's I feel so privileged to be a part of this association. Not only because I have an outlet where I can share what I know, but more importantly, I have the way I can learn even more, and I've learned a lot from being in this community. And in the final analysis, is what you can take back, in my opinion. The drugs are coming out, thank God for that. This is the time of treatment, but we know that it's going to take a while to get to third world countries. So what we can learn about early detection, early intervention is absolutely crucial. Somebody say amen. Amen. All right, let's do it. Okay, so that's my introduction. I usually like to start with this picture because it kind of like tells you what's going on. This is not just the mental case. The healthy brain on the left, okay, you can say it. Healthy brain on the left, a diseased Alzheimer's brain on the right. By the time a person is about to die from Alzheimer's disease, they've lost about 30 to 35 to 40% of their brain's actual mass. That's a lot of brain tissue, and it's also a lot of function. How many people here are dealing with or taking care of someone who has Alzheimer's disease? Or concerned about it? Okay, all right, so a few of you. This explains to a very large extent the memory loss, the irrational behavior, the lewdness, the aggressiveness, the agitation, and so on and so forth. And of course, you're dealing with cleaning up after the person. I mean, this is a tough job to have. 42% of caregivers actually die before the patients they're taking care of dies. And that's really unfortunate. So it's extremely important to know what to do to take care of yourself while you're taking care of your loved one. Make sense? Okay. All right, so that's another brain, and then that's a picture of the Alzheimer's thing. So it's not just memory loss. I sometimes get a little miffed when people say, oh, it's just about memory loss. We have the memory care centers. It's a lot more than just memory. It's a shutting down of the brain. I started my career as a cancer doctor, so we treated brain cancer, and I see many parallels between brain cancer and Alzheimer's disease. It's a really, really tough case. So I'm going to be talking about threes. We'll see how many, as we go through this lecture, or this class, you let me know how many threes you've been able to identify. Hope, humility, and honesty. What was the last one? Humor. How did I forget humor? Got it. I apologize. Hope, humility, and humor. Right, so we're talking about threes. Here's the first three. There are three categories of people who have twice the risk of dementia, Alzheimer's disease, as the rest of the population. From this picture, I guess you can tell which three they are. So give them to me. One. Okay. All right. Tell me which are the top three that have the highest, twice as high as the population. One. What? Somebody said veterans. Yes, sir. Veterans. It's right there in front of you. And number three. Women. And women. That's right. I see 2/3. So 2/3 of them here are women as well. We're probably not going to go into the details too much, but so you can imagine the person with the highest risk would be a female black veteran. And I actually met one in DC not too long ago, and she was already beginning to show the signs. My heart just goes out to her because she also had kidney disease. It's like it's going to be a tough one. Someone like that, you got to hold by the hand and give all the support you possibly can. There are different reasons why women are more likely to have dementia. One is obviously age. You all tend to live longer, but there are other things too that are involved. And I think it's very important. The more we study these at-risk groups, the more we'll be better able to understand how to apply it to the general population. So I think it's really instructive if we really learn about these things. So the question, of course, is why? Why do blacks and African Americans have the highest risk? Now, some of the suggestions and solutions, the reasons given, obviously, in this country, the racial issues, racial disparity, what else we have here? Access to care, availability. Those are big problems. They are deeply rooted in the community. There are deep seated resentments, things that have gone on. I am not in a position to talk much about it because I don't have that same lived experience. That does not mean that I don't appreciate to some degree what people have gone through. And that has absolutely affected many people and put them on the track towards dementia. But having said that, I also come from a country in which the rates of dementia are rising rapidly as well. And we do not have a history of racism there. Tribalism, maybe religious conflict, yes, but racism and slavery are not part of most of our culture. And so we gotta look to something else. In addition, the racial disparity is absolutely important, but there's only so much you can do about it. It's usually living into the big guy at the top or the advocates who can really push your case forward. But where you are as an individual, you have the agency only over certain things, and that is not one of those things. You have the agency over your mind and your body. So this is what we need to focus on. And this is what we need to teach our children and our grandchildren as well, because this begins to start very, very early in life. The disadvantages that we have as Black people begin to affect us at a much earlier age. And I'm not saying in your 50s or 40s, I'm talking about your 20s. So we got to get a handle on this. All right, and so I mentioned, so some of the other things, social isolation. We have higher rates of diabetes and hypertension, like twice. Now, you can't really blame race on diabetes. Or you can't really blame diabetes on race because it's primarily a lifestyle factor. So, and diabetes and hypertension, there's a straight line to dementia. Very straight. I was shocked myself when I started studying it. All right, so let's move on. So to really understand what is going on and what causes dementia, we need to look at the definition. And I'm going to read it out. Alzheimer's disease is a degenerative brain disease that is caused by complex brain changes following cell damage. I want to emphasize that. It leads to dementia symptoms that gradually worsen over time. We know that dementia worsens over time. But the key is cell damage. In other words, there have been attacks on your brain over a period of time. And that's good news. Before, we used to think dementia was this big bad wolf. Alzheimer's disease was this big bad wolf that's just gonna appear out of nowhere, body check you, and it's gonna huff and puff and blow your house down, and there's absolutely nothing you can do at any point in time. But now, we know that even up to as much as 40% can be you can reduce the risk by about as much as 40%, depending on what you do. And so if we know where the attacks are coming from, if we know the nature of these attacks, we'll be more likely to protect ourselves from it. And probably more importantly, if the attacks have happened, we'll be able to know what to do to recover more quickly. I'm going to give you an example. Everybody knows about NFL, the injuries and the sports CTE and all that. It was a Nigerian doctor, by the way. I don't know if you saw the movie Succession, right? It was a Nigerian doctor who first brought it to the nation, to the public. I tell you what, if I were the doctor, if I were to deal with NFL people, as soon as they got those head injuries, the concussions, in addition to the standard treatment, they should have also been taking a lot of omega-3 fatty acids because the brain needs omega-3. The brain is made up of omega-3s. And so, as a rule, if I were king for a day, I'll make sure that all NFL players took omega-3 fatty acids in addition to anything else they were doing, because omega-3 fatty acids have been one of the most important things. That's just an example. Okay? That's just an example. There are a few other things we want to talk about as well. So when I started looking into this, I was like, okay, let's find out what are the key things that make people more prone to dementia. I call them the highways to dementia, or a term I've come to use. Dementia's dirty dozen. And so I'm not going to spend too much time. We're going to run through it. But in almost every case, I don't know why this has to happen to us, but in almost every case, we see the disadvantage more among Black people. And you know what? Now I realize why not too many people, some of the things I'm going to be talking about, is because not too many people who look like me are in the field of dementia. When I go and speak in groups, many Black groups, mostly ladies, and they all say that their geriatrician or their psychiatrist or psychologist is a white male or female who doesn't really understand them as well as they should. And so we see that, and so they're not able to address the issues as well. Now, am I saying that every person who deals with the elderly should be the same race as the patient they're talking about? No. But my point is that you won't find many people talking about these things because these are very uncomfortable to talk about. It's hard for a white person to come standing over an audience like you and start talking about the disadvantages that you have that are putting you on the track towards dementia. Let's face it, it's really hard. So I can say it because I don't care. But because it's important that you know about this. Okay, so let's move on. All right, so we're going to start with illness. We mentioned diabetes. Obesity is a big problem too. If you have epilepsy and other things. There are things that make your brain more vulnerable. Hypertension too is a big problem as well. I'm just going to run through it and then now highlight the ones that are really pertaining to Blacks. Okay, intoxication, insult. We have toxins in the environment, both in the home, cleaning agents, makeup, hairspray, so on and so forth. We are bathed. We are being marinated. Even the cell phones that we're using are affecting our brains adversely. So there's a lot going on, a lot. And activity, great job, Marvel.
Yeah, Marvel.
Great job. Activity is so important. It is so important. It is so important. Okay. How many times did I say that? That's a lot. All right. Insufficiencies. There are certain nutrients that we lack. Most people are lacking that are extremely important for the brain. The obvious one is omega-3. Imbalances. I'm just going to go through it. I'm just kind of like infections. COVID-19. We're now beginning to see huge amounts of reports of people who are having earlier dementia as a result of COVID. They had COVID, and then eventually their cognitive function is being affected.
Wow.
That's a big problem. By the way, I mentioned toxins. World Trade Center, first responders. That was like 20 years ago, right?
Right.
Usually that's the time it takes, and we're beginning to see dementia cases there. Among the first responders. It's a tsunami coming, folks. COVID-19 has changed everything. Everything. All right. Another thing is sleep. Most people don't really realize this, but sleep is absolutely crucial for your brain health. And it has to be proper sleep. It has to be proper sleep. And we're now understanding that it takes about 7 to 8 hours of good sleep a night for your brain to be healthy. If you don't sleep well enough, your memory is going to be affected. Your nerves, your ability to use glucose. If you're not sleeping well enough, you are more likely to have diabetes and cancer and a few other things. So if you're a night worker or you know someone who is a night worker, they are at higher risk of dementia and cancer and other things, and other chronic diseases. Isolation is a big problem. The term social frailty. Has anybody heard that before? Social frailty. Very important. We are made for connections and we need it even more as we grow older. Immune dysfunction. I don't want to talk about that much. But here we have, okay, so I have this brief schematic that I had my staff do for me. So there are different things that are kind of affecting the brain. So there's psychological stress down there, social. The cool thing about being in Baltimore or Maryland is that you've got all these great researchers who are addressing these different aspects of the brain. And so I get the chance to really reach out to them, get hop on a Zoom, hear what they're talking about, and hopefully we'll be able to get them to actually do some presentations for the association. Because there's a lot. They're now beginning to look at why Black people actually have higher rates of dementia. And we know there's someone who's collecting Black brains and comparing them with whites. There's another person to study psychological stress. There's someone in Johns Hopkins who's actually studying the genes. What is it about our genes that make us more prone or put us at a disadvantage? So great times. Hopefully we'll be able to really address this thing. All right, so here's the second set of threes. Due to factors like diet, activity levels, remember I'm saying these are the things that are within our control. Everybody say within my control. Within, oh that was pitiful. Let's try again. Within my control.
Yes.
Better. The things that we'll be talking about are things that are within your control. So things like diet, activity levels, genetics, maybe not, but lifestyles. But there's some things you can do to minimize that control. So what we found out in summary is that African Americans, people of color, I got to learn all the different terms, but I just like the word Black. Is that okay? I mean, it's one syllable, right? African American. So black works for me. So we generally have greater attacks on our brains over a period of life, and I'm going to explain that real quick. Over a period of our lifetimes, we have greater attacks, and attacks start at an earlier age. We have less protective measures. And then we are, here's the big one, we are least likely to seek medical attention, especially if it has to do with our brains or our minds. It's not an African American thing, it's a Black thing. Because we see the same thing in Africa. Even if you have access to the medical doctors or psychiatrists or psychologists, they will not do it. So it's probably a cultural thing, I don't know. It's deep somewhere in our psyche. So you gotta educate, that's the thing, educate. So let's go back to what the focus is. It's about cell damage. Where's the damage coming from? What's causing the damage? Yes, we've talked a little bit about, well, we're not concluding yet. Still got a little time, okay. There are three takeaways. So we've talked about a few things, and I really want to dwell to really dive into this. I really want to dive into this so you really understand what I'm talking about. If there are questions, please write them down. I might give some time. Yes, ma'am.
I have one more. On the previous slide, you said less protection. What do you mean by that?
Yes.
So you said greater attacks, assaults on our brains, less protection, least likely to seek medical attention. So the other two, they're explanatory, but what is the less protection?
Okay, you understand the first one though?
Yes.
Okay. The less protection has a lot to do with the nutrients and our diets. Okay? I'm going to be talking about things like vitamin D very soon. We're going to be talking about the nutrients that protect our brains. So there are actually nutrients that if you lack them, automatically your brain's going to be damaged. It's not eventually, no. If you don't have certain nutrients in optimal amounts in your body and in your brain, and this applies to everybody, it just so happens that we tend to be less. Why? I mentioned vitamin D, right? Does anybody know why I mentioned vitamin D? Come on, somebody. Please. Try. Vitamin D. Why did I mention vitamin D? Heart health, yes. But that's not hitting on the point. Yes, ma'am. What? Because of the sun. Yeah, be more specific. Melanin. No. Sorry. Why would I say vitamin D in a mostly black or to a mostly black audience? Because we are lacking. We are the most deficient in vitamin D by far. And God, you see? And I'm like, why isn't everybody saying this? Why isn't everybody saying this? Okay, let me explain to you real quick. Somebody said melanin, good job. Melanin acts as a kind of sunscreen. It shields you from the sun. People, they say historically people migrated from Africa, East Africa, right? And the further and further and further they went away from East Africa and the equator, their skins became lighter and lighter and lighter because they needed to have more access to the sun. This, I really hate that vitamin D is called a vitamin because it's not a vitamin. It's an extremely important compound. What vitamin D does, yes, it helps with the heart, yes, it helps with the bones, yes, it helps with the immune system. You all heard about vitamin D during COVID-19, right?
Sure.
That was a big thing. Now there's a lot of data now that shows that vitamin D, that people who had the worst kinds of COVID long haul, and the majority of those who died had very, very low levels of vitamin D. Vitamin D also helps in the development and growth and protection of your brain. And because of our melanin, and because of something cultural, I think something in our psyche too, we don't like going out in the sun. Listen, I'm still shocked at this. A friend of mine sent me a picture. He sent me a picture and he was like, his family and all that, and they were on the beach, but they were all fully clad. Yeah. And everybody around them, the white people were in their bikinis and their shorts. And I'm like, what is going on? Finally, another doctor explained it to me. He grew up he was 3 years old when he migrated with his family from Ghana to the US. And he's like, he doesn't understand it too, that when he and his family are out and he and his business partner are out, she's a lady, they tend to feel uncomfortable, just exposing everything. Not everything, right? I'm thinking, but they tend not to. Can anybody explain that to me? Maybe afterwards, explain to me why is that we need the sun the most. Because one reason, I'm going to move on very soon, but one reason is that we have to spend like 6 times as much time in the sun to get the amount of vitamin D that we need. And it's not just about vitamin D. There are other things too that we get from the sun that are absolutely critical to brain function and overall body health. We're not staying out in the sun. We don't go out. We don't go on hikes. We don't move around. So anyway, okay, let's move on to that. Okay, does that kind of explain it a little bit? I just gave vitamin D as an example. There are several other examples. Maybe next time I'm here, we can talk about the other examples as well. But I think vitamin D is extremely important. I'm going to touch on it some more very soon. Okay, what I want to leave you with is the 3 most important things to pay attention to, especially if you're Black. 1, we are most likely you've got to pay attention to your cardiovascular health, speaking specifically of your the health of your arteries. The health of your arteries, the arteries are the blood vessels that take blood from your heart to the brain, of course, obviously from your heart to your heart as well, because your heart needs oxygen and all that. What you must do if you, and this happened to me too, it's amazing. When I came here, like I said, I was traveling around, I was in the country, I drove my car all the way from Baltimore to California. I stayed all over the place, and this was even before the vaccines came. So I don't know why I was doing what I was doing, but somehow I made it. I gained a lot of weight. I've lost like 20 pounds now, but I gained a lot of weight, and I didn't really think much about it until I went to a church one day, and they were doing free blood pressure screenings and free blood sugar screenings, and I went. Of course, they were like, "Yeah, Black people are more likely to have hypertension and diabetes." Well, lo and behold, my blood pressure was high. I couldn't believe it. I thought I was healthy. I was doing all the things right. I gained weight, yeah, but I was eating right. I was taking supplements. I still had it, and so I've had to start going on. But here's okay. All right, let me just move on to the next one. I'll explain my point. All 3 of these are closely related to each other. So we know. Does everybody know about insulin resistance? Mm-hmm. Okay, that's what kind of like puts you on the course towards diabetes. It's like your cells are not taking in glucose, and insulin is what helps open the doorway of your cells so that they can take in glucose. No insulin, or if your cells are not responding to insulin, you're going to have a buildup of blood sugar, in the blood. And once you have a buildup of sugar in the blood, it's going to affect your brain, it's going to affect your kidneys, it's going to affect a lot of things. So it's crucial that we increase the sensitivity of our cells. And that's why you have the drugs that's why you take on different kinds of drugs. And the third one is vitamin D deficiency, which again affects the other two. So they all kind of work together, but obviously you address them in different ways. Let's start with cardiovascular. I play squash with a cardiovascular surgeon, or we call them vascular surgeons here. I play squash with him, and the main complaint he gave me is that black people don't heal as well after treatment, after surgery. One of it is genetics, yes, but he also said that they don't take their medications like they should. They don't take care of themselves. When he gives them instructions, they don't respond as well. Again, he's not going to talk to his patients now. He'll probably say a few things. He'll probably put his head down because he doesn't want to be BLM'd out of existence, right? He wants to make sure that he wants to stay in his lane. So I'm telling you, because you need to know this, that it's very important that you take your blood, whether it's blood sugar medications, blood pressure medications. You do not want your blood pressure high for too long. Again, I mentioned blood sugar. If your blood pressure is high, they are now shown that, think about a hose, for instance, a garden hose. It's built to withstand only a certain amount of pressure. If that pressure gets too high, what happens? It starts creating cracks and it starts leaking out and splitting out in different areas. Same thing can happen in the brain and the rest of your body. But what your brain does is that it tries to plug those holes, but doesn't do it as well as it should. And so it can cause things like inflammation, and eventually it can lead to dementia. So it's extremely important that you do the basic things properly. You get your blood pressure and your blood sugars under control. And this is what can happen. The problem is that you can have up to 70% blockage of your blood vessel, and you wouldn't feel a thing. But that maybe 30% can get blocked, just like that. Either it's called a heart attack or it's called a stroke. Okay, there you go. So I just mentioned we have sugar problems. Let's talk a little bit about vitamin D. And again, this would probably take a whole lecture on its own, but my conscience will not let me if I don't address this as much as it should, because you should. Now, here's the thing. This is one of the great mysteries of life, because, like I said, we need the sun the most, and yet we're the ones who run away from it the most. Greatest mystery. I mean, this passes. Yes, ma'am.
So have you heard of the concept called colorism?
No, I have not. What is it?
So colorism
Yes.
is something that is prevalent in many communities of color in
Okay.
Asia, in India,
Okay.
where people that have a lighter complexion are higher valued within a society
Yeah.
versus people who have a darker complexion.
Martin Gladwell talked about that too, right?
So
Yeah.
colorism is real.
Uh-huh.
It's real in the Asian community. It's real, like I said, all over the world. That's why there are those skin bleaching creams
Yeah.
that are poison.
All
They're
right.
toxic. So
Yeah.
it's a thing.
Yeah.
And so that probably has a large factor in why people of color, and I prefer that term, may shy away from the sun.
Yeah.
My best friend in high school was from India. 3 beautiful girls. The youngest one had a darker complexion. When they would go back to India, she was told she was ugly and unattractive because she had a light. They're again gorgeous. And by the way, I am a board certified neurologist and a fellow of the American Academy of Neurology.
Great.
I'm one of those rare unicorns.
Yes.
Program.
Yes.
And so, you and I can talk more after.
Absolutely.
I have lots to say on, the hypertension and diabetes piece, but nevertheless, just to clarify, the mystery isn't that mysterious, at least in my mind, yeah.
Well, it doesn't explain black men though. Men, does that explain the colors? Does it explain men as well?
Colors is not gender specific.
Interesting. Thank you so much for pointing that out. Yeah, we definitely should talk after this. All right, so I guess I should just get rid of that slide then. Mystery solved. So this is a list of the different things that we're seeing as higher incidences among blacks. It's not just about vitamin D, but this was from the FDA. It says, in sharp contrast to their white counterparts, black have a much higher incidence and mortality of certain types of aggressive cancers and autoimmune conditions, much higher, including diabetes, that cannot be attributed entirely to socioeconomic differences or disparities in healthcare. I mean, we have an explosion of kidney diseases and dialysis and transplants in Nigeria. All right, so let's say a few things about remember, I'm thinking from a person that comes from a very low resource country. And we don't have all the access to all the different nice, nifty gadgets and experts that you all have here. I have to think in terms of the lowest common denominator. What works, what are the most fundamental, the most basic things that we can apply without the use of, like I said, fancy equipment, fancy tests and all that will be safe and effective. And we can see results. That's how I think. So when it comes to tests and all that, absolutely important. But we also know that we can't even do a vitamin D test in Nigeria. Most hospitals. So when I'm treating my patients, I take that into mind. But a few things that vitamin D is important for. It's important, what is known as everybody knows what a neurotransmitter is, right? Neurotransmitters are the chemicals that the brain needs to communicate between cells. What happens in Alzheimer's disease, by the way, Alzheimer's disease is primarily a disease of the synapses, those connections between cells. Yeah. That is what is lost. Yeah. And once the connections are lost, the cells follow and die. And what they are saying is that the brain is the one actually initiating that destruction.
Wow.
The brain is the one shutting down those synapses as a result of, it's kind of like hibernation. When it gets to a certain point, there's a certain degree of damage over a period of time that eventually the brain is the one now shutting things down. That's what the research is now showing. Wow. So vitamin D is important in nerve growth. It also protects. This is all front page Google stuff. You don't have to dig too deep for that. This is right there. If you search for it, what does vitamin D do for your brain? Just go for it. Vitamin D protects neurons. So protection, that's vitamin D. I'm just going to skip up, but very, very important. So they've done tests and they've seen, okay, what vitamin D does for the brain, and they've done processing, memory, and all these different tests. And they seem to see that people who are lacking vitamin D tend to have lower. But think about this. Each spring, summer, autumn, or you say fall here, right? Fall. Yeah, in the sun, you're getting vitamin D. You're soaking up vitamin D. When winter comes, about 3 months, right? You're not getting any vitamin D, even if you go out in the sun, because it's tilted away. Something about the sun. So even if you went out naked in the sun, you're not getting the vitamin D. So what happens is that we black people have a lot of, so we have less reserves of vitamin D when we go into winter. White people have more. So you're dipping into whatever reserves you have, and then when you come out, that's why you have more flu and more issues. That's one of the reasons. I don't want to say that's 10 minutes more. Got it. All right. So I just had these are a few of the slides and a few of the people who are examples of people who have less vitamin D. You're over 40. You're pre-diabetic. Whatever disease, if you have a chronic disease, you're going to be low in vitamin D. You have darker skin. That's a big one right there. If you're obese or heavier, you tend to have less vitamin D because vitamin D gets stored in the fat. These are different shades. The people that are at the top get vitamin D very easily because they are pasty white. And then those at the bottom, the darker you are, the less vitamin D you can have. Alright, how much do you need? It's a question everybody, your doctor should answer for you. So your doctor should do a test. Here in the US, so you gotta do a test. In the US, you gotta do a test. Make sure you have the right approach to it. I'm just gonna tell you what I do for my patients. And again, we had to run this by the government and all that. I mean, I just say, listen, and we've been doing this with kids as well, because I treat kids with sickle cell disease. We find out vitamin D works. I personally take nothing less than 10,000 international units. I recommend patients during the winter, they take 10,000, and anything, then if they do the summer, they take 5,000, because we know that most people are very deficient in vitamin D. Okay, how much do you, how's this thing working? Sorry guys. If somebody could just advance the slides for me, that would be great. You got that point out. Thanks, Eric. Okay, great. So on average, you need about 30 to 100, and I'm going to stop from here. You need about 30 to 100 is the range that is recommended. All right. Most people we're finding out are below 20 if you haven't done your test, especially during the winter. Now, this is a doctor who is he's in Cleveland Clinic. He's specifically focused on African American problems. He's written a book about it. He went to do his test, and he had less than 9. So, the range is 30 to 100. He had less than 9. This is somebody who is in the field of understanding this. Nowadays, next slide. Nowadays, they say that you shouldn't have, so this is neurologist on the right. You know who that is? You know Dr. Dale Bredesen? Okay. And this is a cardiothoracic surgeon, a very famous cardiothoracic surgeon. They both in active practice, and they say you shouldn't have anything less than 100. Anything less than 100. So speak to your doctor about it. But the recommendation of 30 was basically for your bone health. When they came up with these numbers, they weren't thinking about your brain all that much. Now we know that the vitamin D is extremely important for your brain. So if you're a black person and you're lacking vitamin D, you know that's affecting your brain. There's don't pass go, don't collect 200. You know that you're deficient in vitamin D, and therefore it's affecting your brain. Yes, sir. Okay. So this is another three things I would strongly recommend you get. One is get a blood pressure measuring device and measure yourself every blinkety-blink day. You want to measure? This is like 30 or 40 or 50 bucks. I measure my blood pressure every single day myself. So you got to take your meds and make sure that you check with your doctor too. I would say get a sleep mask. Sleep mask is very important. You have to sleep in absolute, complete darkness for your brain to do the work of consolidating memories, of repairing itself, of recovering, of rejuvenating itself. Most of us sleep with the lights on, with the TV on, with the cell phone next to us, and so on and so forth. Turn off the lights and get a face mask. I would also recommend that you get a glucose monitoring device if you're concerned about diabetes. We do not want your brain hates spikes. It hates spikes. If you start having spikes, your brain is gonna revolt. Yes, sir. So that's a sleep mask, just in case you know what I'm talking about. You gotta have a sleep mask. I mean, I take a sleep mask where I go, so I sleep in darkness. So 3 things. So I'm keeping track of the 3s. 3 things to commit to. After each meal, I recommend you go out. This is summertime. Get out in the sun. Take a walk. Don't go sit down and watch TV. Don't play bingo. You come back after the walk and play bingo, whatever it is. But you gotta get insulin, you gotta get your blood sugar levels down. And they're beginning to find out this is very important. You gotta get more fiber. That also speaks to the whole sugar problem. Fiber helps to keep your blood sugar and your cholesterol levels regular. And you want to optimize your vitamin D levels. Have I said enough about vitamin D? I have, right? Have I overdone it? Yeah?
Did you name the foods that are rich in vitamin D?
That's a problem. Maybe salmon or fish, but we eat salmon every day. Milk is fortified with vitamin D sometimes. Most foods simply don't provide you with the vitamin. At the very best, maybe 1,000 IUs you can get from food if you are very deliberate about it. So if you can't get out in the sun, especially between the hours of 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. and expose at least half of your body to the sunlight, then what do you think I would ask you to do? Get what? Take the supplement. Yeah. There's just no other effective way. If you can't get out in the sun, the good thing is that skin cancer is not big among the Black community, so that's not an excuse. I guess the colorism one is the excuse, but you shouldn't be afraid of skin cancer. Next slide, please. All right, final. All right, so we've done, just so you know, we've done about 5. There's been a case of 3, so 5 threes. The 3 most at-risk groups, we know who they are. 3 major reasons Blacks are at highest risks. We've addressed that, right? Most attacks, least defense. I just mentioned vitamin D only because it's very important. There are things like vitamin B1, vitamin B12, magnesium, potassium, folic acid, that are extremely important, not just for the brain, but for the blood vessels. Another thing I forgot to mention, pathologists, speaking about blood vessels, pathologists have said this. And these are people who are studying dementia. Pathologists are those who study the dead, people who are dead, right? So what they've said is that, I was at a conference and I watched him, I was shocked when he said this. And that got me thinking. He said he has seen brains that have been riddled with amyloid plaques. That's the thing with dementia, right? But yet they still had good cognitive function. He has seen brains that have been riddled with tau tangles, and they still had good cognitive function when they died. He has seen brains that have had both tau tangles and amyloid plaques before they died. He has never seen a brain that had either amyloid plaques or tau tangles and evidence of vascular disease that did not have Alzheimer's disease. So the blood flow to the brain and within the brain cells, the health of those blood vessels is absolutely crucial. And one of the things that compromise the health of your blood vessels, we mentioned them already. What are the 2 main things that compromise the health of your blood vessels? Sugar and high blood pressure. Cholesterol is further down, but those two, like the most important things. High blood pressure and sugar. You can't play with it. You can't play with it. All right. So what are the 3 areas to focus on? The blood vessels, insulin resistance, that's sugar, and of course vitamin D. You gotta get vitamin D. 3 things to purchase. Blood pressure measures. A mask, great. Paying attention. Good job, Murphy. 3 things to commit to doing. Take a walk. Get some sleep. What?
Just get good sleep. Yeah.
Get good sleep. Is that what I said? No? Wait. Can you go on one step back? I forgot myself. Maybe I need to get some stuff. The things coming to. Take a walk, eating more fiber, optimizing your vitamin D levels. Either you go out in the sun, or you take a supplement, or you take your food. Don't kill yourself, folks. You're not going to get it from your food.
Yeah.
You're not going to get it.
And you said between the hours of 10 and 3?
Yes.
Is that when the sun's the strongest?
Sun is most overhead. And you can't be in a greenhouse. You're not going to get sun here. Even if the sun, you brought the sun in all its glory, and put it in this room, most of you aren't going to get vitamin D.
Yeah.
Why?
We burned up, that's why.
No, well, yeah, let's assume we're going to burn up. It's because we're almost all fully clad.
Yeah.
We're all covered up. I mean, even in Arabia, they have a lot of sun. I mean, in Saudi Arabia and all these places, a lot of them are really deficient in vitamin D because they're fully clad. Yes, sir. I think we're almost done.
What about those tanning machines?
That may
They're
help too.
artificial?
All right, so I just want to leave you with this last thoughts. Think about it always in this way. Think about your brain. That's the most important organ you have. Heart in your brain, heart in your brain, you know, brain, heart. But would you really want to live without a brain? A functioning brain? You gotta think, and this is how you want to be thinking from now on. We'll give you a few suggestions. Things that strengthen your brain, things that weaken your brain. We talk about dementia's dirty dozen. Things that increase the attacks in your brain. You want to avoid that. Things that improve the strength and wholesomeness and vitality of your brain. You want to stick to those things. As with all good things, the weeds grow easily, the really good plants and the flowers don't grow automatically. You've got to exert the efforts, you've got to do the work to find out and to apply. I'm giving you a few things to think about, but it's very important that you teach these things, you apply them to yourself, you teach them to your friends and family, especially to the generation coming up. They need to know about this as well. I was shocked, the guy who was interviewing me, the guy is probably not 25, 30, yeah, young kid. He had never heard about vitamin D being important for your health before. So they need to know about it. Next one. Okay, so this used to be the case, thankfully now with great research and all that, and the medications that are coming out, and of course, our own being educated, being advocating for our health. This, what used to be an impossible situation, hopefully will be one of those possible situations. So I want to say a big thank you for your time, thank you for listening, and take care. Thank you.